Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the long range meta for Warzone for Season 2. I know this video has been a little bit delayed. I took a little vacation over the weekend and then I've been doing little spotty videos outside that. But today we're going to talk about the overall meta for long range for Warzone in Season 2. Quick little self-promo here at the start. True Game Data now has Android and iOS apps. We've had them for a month and a half or so. So you can get those downloaded if you want to be able to play with the weapons yourselves and try to, find your meta. That's the whole point of TGD at this point. Find your meta, not what me or anyone else is telling you is the meta on a YouTube video or Twitter or anything like that. You can use the tools on TGD to try to find what actually is best for you. So a little self-promo there, but we'll get back to it here and talk about the long-range meta. As always with these long-range meta videos, I'm going to use MetaGen, which is the tool on TGD that lets you kind of weight certain stats how you want, and then a giant AI optimization tool will calculate out the best builds for every single weapon for that weapon category for your settings. So I'm just going to use the default settings today, and we will go through what is up at the top as far as MetaGen is concerned, and then if there's any tweaking that needs to be done, I'll mention that as we go through this. So the meta is actually really healthy right now. We have a bunch of really good options. I've said this before, but anything over like a 9, 9.5 in MetaGen score-wise is going to be highly competitive here. So we're going to start down at like a 9.2 with the bas-b. Bas-b has gotten pretty heavily nerfed over the last few patches, so it's kind of been kicked out of the meta a little bit, but it's still decent, so it's still sitting at a 9.2 out of 10. And obviously the builds that MetaGen recommends are over on the right, so you guys can pause this anytime and look at those. TAQ V, 9.29 out of 10, it's actually in a pretty decent spot. It's just a heavy-hitting, high recoil gun. Kastov 545, there's actually a few Modern Warfare 2 weapons up here, which is pretty rare. In the past, we have not had any Modern Warfare 2 weapons up at the top. So Kastov 545 actually had like a little buff recently. I think it was like 2 patches ago or 1 patch ago or something like that. So the first damage range got a big damage increase. So now it's up at 9.31 after those changes. So not bad. It's a low recoil option from Modern Warfare 2. TAQ Eradicator, this is the LMG that it's just super low recoil, so it's a pretty solid spot here with 9.48. MetaGen obviously takes into account all the different stats, recoil, bullet velocity, all those different things to get these scores and the recommended builds. So it's a pretty cool system, and it's not perfect. I'm never trying to claim it's perfect. I'll never be able to make it perfect, and it'll never be perfect for everyone, even if you tune it. But what it does is it gets you pretty close to what the real meta is, and then you can kind of tweak it around a little bit and get what you like to use based on its output. Next up, BP50. BP50 is actually really good. 9.5. We're getting up to like 9.5 out of 10 now. These are super viable weapons. Like a 9.5 is definitely usable. It's just maybe not quite the absolute best, but it's could be very, very good. So we got the BP50 with 9.53. This is a newer weapon. It's a pretty mobile, fast shooting AR. I actually really like the BP50. This is one of my top weapons right now. Then just above that, we have the SVA 545 at 9.68. The SVA is one of the better ARs right now. MetaGen tends to like the LMGs because they have low recoil. But if you're playing Resurgence, you're probably going to want to look more at these ARs like the SVA, the BP, and a couple more that we'll cover up top here. But I do want to mention the SVA has low recoil when it's on automatic, but if you toggle it to single fire mode, which is actually a 2-round burst, it is literally 0 recoil. So if you're someone that doesn't like controlling recoil, or you're not good at controlling recoil, use the SVA 545, change its fire mode over to that little hyper burst 2-round burst, and you will be just super, super accurate with that. And it's already good even with the automatic recoil. So if that was in here, it would probably be up towards the top. Next up, we have the DG58 LSW at 9.74. This has always been an LMG that was near the top as far as stats are concerned, and the MetaGen is concerned. It's always been kind of right there next to the top, but it's still in a great spot even after some slight changes a couple patches ago. Just above that, we have the Sidewinder. So this one, I kind of disagree with MetaGen a little bit. It's gotten some recoil buffs, so it's not as bouncy as it was before, but it's still kind of hard to hit those shots. It's really hard to quantify like the bounciness of the recoil left to right. I've spent many hours trying to perfect that, and it's still not perfect on MetaGen. And I think that's why Sidewinder is pretty high up there. It has good TTK numbers, and all the other stats are okay, but it's just the recoil is not great. But you can see that we're still on still on bronze at 9.76, so that means the meta is really healthy right now. We have a lot of really good options. Next up, we have the Pulamiat, so this is 9.78, and this is the same build as before, where it uses the Jack Annihilator Bullpup kit. This has been nerfed multiple times, and it's still extremely good. It's still up towards the top. 9.78 is, you know, basically meta. Like that's close enough that it's going to be basically meta. Next up, we have the MTZ 762. This is an extremely popular weapon right now for Resurgence. It's a little higher recoil, but it hits really hard. I cannot figure out why MetaGen will not put the 30-round mag on this. I've been tweaking with that for like the last, I don't know, hour and a half. That's what this video should have been out earlier, but I was trying to figure out why it will not put the 30-round mag on the MTZ 762. So I would just recommend swapping the high-velocity ammunition for the 30-round mag. But yeah, that's a weird one. But it's a great gun, 9.8, and it should probably be a little higher than that if MetaGen was putting that 30-round mag on it. Next up, TAQ Evolvere. So this is the new LMG that was like ultra meta when it first came out, and then, or no, sorry, it was ultra terrible when it first came out, and then just recently, probably about a week ago, there was a surprise buff to it where it was just so much better than everything else out of the blue. Don't know why that was the case, but they've now nerfed it back into a spot where it's still good and it's still a relatively close to meta weapon. It's just not ridiculously overpowered like it was for a little bit there. So yeah, that's a pretty good gun. It's not going to be as good as it was before, but it's still very good. And then the newly buffed MTZ 556 is at 9.86 out of 10. This was buffed just yesterday. If you guys saw my video yesterday, I covered the changes there. It now is a pretty low recoil option. I did have a slight mistake in my video yesterday. There was the recoil numbers I was supposed to divide by 0.88 instead of multiplying by 0.88, so I fixed that now. I wondered why it looked like it had such low recoil in that video. It's still lower, and it was still reduced by about 10 or 15% in that surprise patch yesterday, but it's just not quite as crazy low as it looked in that video. So that's updated now, and MetaGen is including that in its calculations. So it's still a very, very meta option. It has super fast ADS time and mobility and things like that for having as good of a TTK as it has now. So that's why it's sitting up here at 9.86. It's just a very good all-rounder AR. And above that, in the diamond position, we have the Ram 7. This has been very consistent throughout. It's been a great gun for a long time. I personally don't like it. I have a hard time with it because those first few shots are very hard to control. But after that, is super accurate. So it is definitely a meta option up here in the diamond position at 9.88. Then we have the Bruin Mark 9. This is something that I think not a lot of people are actually using, but it is a very good weapon right now. It has great time to kill, super low recoil, and pretty good mobility and things like that because it has that 60-round mag. So it's in a pretty good spot there, and it's just a good all-around weapon. And then in the number 1 position, we have the Holger 26. Not much to say about the Holger. It's kind of a hybrid between like an AR and LMG because it does have that 60-round mag, so it has a pretty fast reload time. Very, very easy to control recoil. Me personally, I'm a big fan of the Holger, the MTZ 556, the MTZ 762, and the SVA. Those would be my top picks. So when I was running the TAQ Evolvere as my secondary as an SMG with TAQ stance, because I couldn't use that was the time when the TAQ Evolvere was also the best long range weapon, so I couldn't obviously have both of those in my loadout. So I was using the Holger 26 with the TAQ Evolvere as my SMG, and it worked really, really well even for Resurgence. Like using it on the small maps, totally fine. Very, very low recoil, pretty good time to kill. Highly, highly competitive weapon. As I'm going through this, I just want to remind you guys the absolute best way to support is through direct subscriptions on TrueGameData.com or in the apps. You'll get access to MetaGen, which is what I just covered, except you'll have the ability to customize it, change the weightings of different stats, and get different outputs. All the other tools, True TTK Simulation, Best Stat Tool, STK Calculator, all these things are premium features that every single one of the tiers has access to. The only difference between these tiers is that Gold gets more MetaGen runs per month, and that is simply because MetaGen is really expensive for us to run, actually. It costs a lot of money every month to get all the MetaGen runs done. But yeah, when you guys subscribe there, it makes it so I don't have to make sensationalist content. I can just be honest with you. I can just make normal thumbnails, normal titles, and try to be honest about my content, which I love. I hated trying to like clickbait stuff. So I really, really appreciate that. But let's get back to the video and talk more about the long range meta. All right, throwing some of those builds onto a TTK chart. So this is going to be the ARs and the BRs from the top list there. We got the Ram 7 in red, MTZ 556 in orange, MTZ 762 in this blue color, and then SVA 545 in green. So the Ram 7 in red has the fastest time to kill out to about 40 meters, which is super important range. And then out to 51 meters, even after the drop off, it's still faster than everything else. So I think that's why the Ram is so popular right now, especially for Resurgence. Out to 51 meters, it just pretty much destroys everything. But you can see that it has a huge drop off. So it goes from 773 up to 1,000 milliseconds of TTK at that 51 meter mark. So past that, all the other options are going to be better pretty much. This is also why the MTZ762 is so popular, because it has such a fast time to kill out to 25 meters, and then past 51 meters, it's the fastest again. So it doesn't have the fastest in the middle zone there from like 22 up to, you know, like 50, but everywhere else it's super good. And then I want to note that kind of the SVA and MTZ556 just kind of trade blows. The SVA, including the hyperburst, so this is including the hyperburst, kills a little bit faster in that first 38 meters, and then after that they kind of trade blows, and the MTZ556 comes out on top again after 53 meters. So they're kind of close, but overall I think I would give the edge to the MTZ556 in automatic mode. But remember, the SVA 545 when toggled to that semi-auto mode has literally no recoil. So in that case, I don't know, it's neck and neck between those two. But I want to note here, so the MTZ762 is super popular right now in the blue line, and let's actually turn off the other two. So MTZ556, MTZ762, the most important range I would say is pretty much in this area here, where the MTZ556 actually is faster to kill. So from 25 up to 45, the MTZ556 is actually a little bit faster than the 762 now. So it's in a really good spot. And then out here at these longer ranges where accuracy becomes more important, I think the 556 is a little bit more accurate as well. So like the real TTK out here at longer ranges is going to be much closer together than that it looks like it is. So I think it's in a great spot. It is a good weapon. It still has a little bit of an S-shaped recoil, which makes it a little hard to use, but it's definitely up there. All right, now comparing the Ram 7 to the LMGs that were in the top for MetaGen. I just want to compare like the LMGs to the ARs and the LMGs to themselves as well. You can see the LMGs are all really similar. So all four of these lines here are super close together out until the first drop at 31 meters, where the Bruin Mark 9 gets a little bit slower first, but then out at longer ranges, the Bruin Mark 9 is the fastest. So you get that's the kind of the trade-off there, is it's a little slower for 10 meters or so, and then after that it's faster than pretty much all the other options. So the Bruin's in a great spot. The Holger is the yellow that also is very similar to the Bruin. Bruin's green, obviously, and they're basically the same. The Holger just has slightly longer damage range, and it is longer damage range in a very important spot, like we talked about with the AR TTK chart. Like from 31 up to 41 is probably where almost, I mean, that's probably like the peak of the normal distribution of where the engagements happen, or somewhere around there, I would guess. TAQ Evolvere is this blue line. It's a little faster than the other LMGs out to 53 meters, and then it drops off really heavily. And it did get a big recoil nerf, so it's still very easy to control. But when I made that video, it literally had like the first two bullets had recoil, and the rest of them just stayed in the same spot. So it's been nerfed. It's not going to be nearly as good, but it's still highly competitive in a lot of ways. And then the MWIII is the orange here. It has more of like an AR profile, where it has two drop-offs. So the first drop-off happens at 39. Second drop-off happens at 53.6. And that kind of just slows it down to match that TAQ Evolvere's slower TTK out at longer ranges. So really, the Holger and the Bruin, I agree with MetaGen. They stick out here as being really good for long range. They just have really fast time to kill out of those longer ranges, and then they're all okay up close, and they all have low recoil. So I think that MetaGen is doing pretty well there. These would be more like, I leaned more towards these LMGs for urzikstan, and then for Resurgence maps, I would lean more towards the ARs that I've covered in this video. So for urzikstan, Holger 26, Bruin Mark 9, going to be hard to beat out there. MTZ 556 is another good option on urzikstan, and so is the SVA 545 on single fire mode. And then for the small map, for Fortune's Keep or any of the other Resurgence maps, Ram 7 I think is still going to be really hard to beat for the time being. MTZ 762 is also very good. And SVA is not bad on the small map. BP50 is not bad on the small map. And then Holger is also not bad, honestly. These two are okay as well. It's just they're going to be slower to kill up close than the Ram 7 by a dramatic amount. And those engagements happen a lot on Resurgence maps. So I think the Ram 7 is still going to be the king for the small map. MPZ-556 also very good for the small maps because it just has low recoil and really good mobility and ADS time, and those things are really important in those mid to close range engagements with your AR. You have to be able to ADS quickly so you can actually get the shots on target. That's kind of where these LMGs lack a little bit. They're heavier, they're slower, the ADS slower, things like that. So those are what I think about the meta. I don't have anything else to talk about. If you guys like the content I put out and all the work that goes into the website, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, and I will see you in the next one.